How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin, and how do you develop the mindset and skills to be successful? You're listening to Designing Schools, and I'm your host, Dr. Sabba Quidwai, educator, researcher, and storyteller. Join me each week for stories and strategies that bridge the gap between research and practice, as together we explore how might we design schools.
Do you remember life before the App Store, when downloading music meant waiting and discovery meant wondering, not scrolling? Then one day the App Store arrived, and suddenly there was an app for everything. We learned to look down, to tap, to swipe, to scroll. We became fluent, not in code or instructions, but in clicks, taps, swipes, and scrolls. Well, this past week, OpenAI changed that. At their 2025 Dev Day, they announced a new kind of digital world, one where you don't open apps anymore, but you talk to them. A world where Canva, Spotify, Zillow, Figma all live inside a conversation, where AI agents can build, design, and reason alongside you. Now, to understand what this week's updates really mean, I want you to imagine it's the year 2030. I want you to meet Noah. He's 21, finishing his last year of college, but Noah doesn't look down. He speaks. His workspace isn't a screen of tabs. It's a conversation. When he is inspired while out on a walk, he doesn't go back to his desk. He taps his fingers together while wearing his smart glasses and says, "Let's design a logo." Canva opens up inside his AI tool, maybe it's ChatGPT, and it sparks a conversation. When he's driving around thinking, "I need to find an apartment near work," Zillow responds with options. When he says, "Play something that feels like possibility," Spotify knows exactly what he means. Noah doesn't navigate the internet anymore. He talks to it, and the internet talks back. Here's the thing. In 2025, he was just 16 years old. He grew up during the moment we're living through right now, when OpenAI turned ChatGPT into a platform of apps and agents that could listen, think, and act. For Noah, this isn't the future. It's the only world he's ever known. And so the question for us is, what do we need to teach him today so that he can lead in that world that he's going to be living in tomorrow? Because the interface has changed again. We're no longer living in the age of clicks. We're entering into the age of conversations. Now, it wasn't just OpenAI. OpenAI and Google gave us a glimpse into how quickly we're moving towards this vision where we move from what I call clicks to conversations. Now, if you didn't follow OpenAI's Dev Day this week, you are not alone. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why we do this podcast. Many people just don't have the time to keep up with the craziness that comes our way. And that's exactly, like I said, what this podcast is for. During Dev Day, Sam Altman also interviewed Jony Ive, and he asked him this question: what is it like building today? And Ive said, the momentum is so extraordinary, it's led us to generate 15 to 20 really compelling product ideas. And the challenge is trying to focus. I've confessed I used to be really good at that. And I've kind of lost some confidence because the choices are so endless. If it was easy, you would know exactly what the good ones are. He said it's just not like that anymore. He said everything just moves so fast. So if you find yourself having a hard time focusing on these updates and keeping up with how quickly AI is changing many aspects of our lives, just know you're not alone. Jony Ive and Sam Altman are right there with us. Now, the announcements recently shared are not ones we all have to rush to use, because they were more for developers to kind of integrate into our ChatGPT experience. And ultimately, this affects consumers and how they interact with technology, which in turn affects our learners. And that's why everyone should be paying attention to what is happening. What OpenAI announced this week marks the next phase of how we will pretty much all use technology. Even if you've never touched a line of code, this is something that's going to affect you. They unveil something called the Apps SDK, which means apps like Canva, Spotify, Zillow, Uber said something a couple days later as well, all now live inside ChatGPT, and you can believe the rest are going to follow. You don't have to open a browser or switch between tabs. You can just say things like design a logo in Canva, find me an apartment on Zillow, and those apps will open up right inside of ChatGPT's window. Now, this might sound small or insignificant, but actually, you know what? Walmart also announced, Walmart is huge. That's where so many people shop, and they now also live inside a conversation. It turns ChatGPT into this hub, a place where your digital life happens. Then came Agent Kit, a toolkit for building what OpenAI calls agents. Now, you can think of an agent as an AI assistant that can actually do things for you. I think the one that's making people really angry these days is Comet. Not just answer questions, but it can do things and take actions. It can take a task, make decisions, connect to other tools, open other apps, and basically do the job. So instead of using 10 different applications and switching between a ton of different tabs, we're soon going to have one intelligent layer that will coordinate everything. It's not perfect right now, but it's getting there. And while this all sounds very futuristic, Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, was very clear. AI has moved from systems you can ask anything to systems you can ask anything to do for you. And that, I think, is the real headline here. This update wasn't just about creating a smarter chatbot or better images. It was a complete shift from information to action, from typing to doing. But here's the nuance I don't want any of us to miss, especially if you are in my network. Just because AI can do more doesn't mean human skills start to matter less. In fact, they are going to matter even more. Coding is still a foundational skill, not because everyone needs to write perfect syntax, but because coding teaches you how systems work, how logic connects, and how ideas become reality. When AI can write the code, your job becomes knowing what to build, why it matters, and how to put it all together, both with people that are going to be using it and the technology. That is not just a technical skill. That requires an entrepreneurial mindset. The ability to see opportunity, to experiment, and turn a concept into something that serves people. And that's exactly what design thinking helps you develop, which is why I'm so obsessed with it. Curiosity, empathy, and the courage to prototype the unknown. So it's not that technical skills are obsolete, it's that they're incomplete without imagination. And that, I think, is the missing piece in so many conversations. It's the same shift we're watching play out inside AI itself. Because as Sam Altman said, this is how we imagine intelligence, working across many different sources, all operating together to deliver smart, useful answers. That is not a technology vision. That is very much like a human world vision for how we're going to start working, learning, and doing everything. Intelligence in every form advances when we learn to combine our strengths. What do we as people do well? What do our AI tools do well? And how do we bring it all together? And just as OpenAI redefined how we interact with intelligence, Google also quietly made a move that shows where all of this is heading next. They announced something called the Gemini 2.5 computer use model. In simple terms, it basically gives AI the ability to use a computer the way we would. And here's what that's going to mean. Until now, AI has interacted with the world through text. It could analyze data, write code, answer questions, but it couldn't really move through all the digital spaces and the many tabs that we have open. This new model is really going to change that. I mean, AI agents in general are really going to change that. The ability to see what's on your screen, click buttons, scroll pages, fill out forms, log into sites. I mean, in one demo, it took information from a pet care website, entered it into a spa's CRM, and booked an appointment all autonomously. The day that starts working, there are a lot of people who are going to be out of a job. I want you to think of it as the moment AI goes from telling you how to do something to just actually doing it for you. And I feel like at this point, I might even sound a bit repetitive, and it's on purpose because I really need everyone to understand this. It's a big deal, not just because it is potentially going to replace people, but because it changes what being human at work will even mean. It changes how people should be thinking about what they're going to do next if they're younger. Tasks that used to be bottlenecks, repetitive, clicking, copying, form filling, are just pretty much going to be handled by agents. What remains, though, will be the creative, strategic, and relational parts of our work that require empathy, context, and trust. And if we're being real, that is just not what majority of people do or have been trained and given practice to do either. But Google's announcement also raises an even bigger question. If AI is able to navigate digital environments on its own, how will we design those environments responsibly? Because as Google pointed out, these systems can be misused. They can click the wrong links, do courses for us, fall for scams, trigger unsafe actions if the guardrails are not strong enough. And sometimes even if they are, they're just going to be able to do things that maybe you would want somebody else to be doing, like in a classroom. So they built in safety checkpoints, confirmation steps before purchases, per action reviews, human in the loop oversight, and all that kind of good stuff. But it's a reminder that progress isn't just about what AI can do. It's about how thoughtfully we act on our behalf. And this ties directly back to the leadership challenge that we started with. The more capable AI becomes, the more our work is going to depend on clarity of intent, on knowing what to delegate, what to design, and what to decide for ourselves. And the reality is, especially when it comes to schools and classes, there are going to be many times where kids have to make these decisions on their own. And that's why skills like design thinking and ethical reasoning are no longer optional. They're survival skills. Because if OpenAI is teaching machines to think in systems and Google is teaching them to act in environments, then the question for all of us is going to become, how in the world are we going to design systems where humans and these agents, or like I call AI teammates, are going to work together to do better things while also giving and making sure everyone kind of has a place in that space as well. So if OpenAI's apps and agents are about intelligence in action, their other release called Sora is where, supposedly according to them, imagination meets intelligence. It launched a little bit quietly on September 30th. Sora was technically invite-only mode, but it soon really blew up. It was iOS only, limited to the US and Canada, and I'll tell you why this really matters in a moment. You actually needed a code to get in. And so when I got it, I think I got 4 invite codes to give out, yet still it exploded. Sora basically takes a sentence and turns it into like a video. It's pretty realistic with synchronized audio and like emotion. It has this thing called a cameo, which basically lets you record yourself and then put yourself for others in any scene. But it brought up a lot of questions about authorship, identity, copyright, all these different things. But according to app figures, Sora saw 627,000 iOS downloads in its first week, just slightly more than ChatGPT's own first week of launch. Then OpenAI's head of Sora confirmed it crossed 1 million downloads in under 5 days. That is faster than ChatGPT, despite the fact that it was invite only. By its first Friday, it had reached #1 on the US App Store, outpacing launches from Anthropic, Microsoft, and many other apps. And that kind of growth should make us pause and really reflect on something. People are not just curious about AI. They apparently really enjoy creating with it. But this time, the conversation wasn't just about productivity or efficiency. It actually started to get into imagination, which I think a lot of people really disagreed with, and whether we can still trust what we imagine together. Because as people began posting Sora videos online, a social media feed basically full of AI-generated content, the line between art and artifact was blurring. Users were making lifelike deepfakes. I mean, these were all AI-generated. Some of people who had passed away, like Robin Williams' daughter, I think it actually was Zelda Williams, she publicly had to ask people, please stop sending her AI-generated clips of her father. And I think it's here that Sam Altman, in a rare moment of clarity, started to name the danger. He wrote on X, it's easy to imagine the degenerate case of AI video generation that ends up with us all being sucked into like an RL optimized slop feed, because that's what pretty much everyone said it was. The team, though, he said, put great care and thought into trying to figure out how to make a delightful product that doesn't fall into that trap. That phrase, slop feed, is probably what everybody was talking about last week. Because the real question that everyone was really wondering was, will this era of generative media fuel our imagination or just drown us in more doom scrolling, this time all AI-generated content? And that's a question that I think is really important for education. Because if Sora can generate worlds, characters, and stories in seconds, the challenge for educators isn't just keeping up with the technology, it's also now really teaching ethical reasoning, something that I have been talking about since day one. How do we help students learn the difference between creation and consumption? Between using AI to expand their ideas and outsourcing it altogether, especially still at a time when most people haven't even embraced the idea that they need to be teaching this to students. And this is where, again, design thinking can potentially bridge that gap. Because design thinking trains imagination with intention. It asks, who am I making this for? What problem is it solving, and what impact is it going to have? And without that lens, AI can oftentimes become noise, optimized for clicks, not curiosity. But with it, AI becomes a canvas, a tool for empathy, innovation, and meaning. So maybe the real divide isn't really between humans and machines anymore. It's between imagination and imitation. Maybe it's between those who feed the system and those who design what it feeds us. And that brings us to the bigger picture. Why all of this, from ChatGPT's new apps to Google's computer-using agents to Sora's viral videos and popular app that they've launched? These are not just product launches. These are markers on the road to AGI. And reminders that intelligence without integrity is just going to give us more slop at scale. And as if this week hadn't already revealed how fast the world is changing, there's one story that reminds us what happens when speed outruns our common sense. Financial services giant Deloitte now has to partially refund the Albanese government after it was caught submitting a 237-page AI-generated report that had a ton of fake references and fabricated quotes. The report, which cost taxpayers about $440,000, which is about $290,000 USD, was supposed to review the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations IT systems. Instead, basically, it cited all of these non-existent court judgments, imaginary papers. I mean, basically, it wasn't a completely fake report, but it just had a lot of fake stuff in it. And it basically took a university person, his name was Chris Rudge, I believe, to uncover 20 inaccuracies and basically call them out. And they had to refund the government. But I can't even imagine how embarrassing that must be. And I think it also just reminds us that, when people misuse AI, it's not just young people, it's everyone. Deloitte later had to admit the report had been written using Microsoft Azure's OpenAI tools, and they correctly added that disclosure to its revised version. But basically, they had no decision-making protocol, they had no way to fact-check, and they probably hadn't trained their people. They agreed to repay back that money. The lawmakers are calling for the full refund, calling it, quote, inappropriate misuse of AI. And here's why this story matters. AI isn't the problem, human judgment is. We're living in a moment where there are no stoplights for AI in the workplace, no flashing red lights to tell us when to use something and when we can't use something. These tools can generate pages of content, research, and strategy in just seconds that looks really good. But if you're not responsible and discerning, or you're not using your human judgment, well, what can potentially happen is right in front of us. And that's exactly why I built the WISE framework and why I've always advocated for no stoplights, let's teach decision making. People have to learn how to do this. So the WISE framework that I created, it looks at well-being, integrity, skills, and engagement. Before we publish, before we share, before we act, we need to ask, does this align with our well-being and purpose? Is it going to be a quick shortcut or something I'm going to stress and worry about later? Does it reflect integrity and transparency? Do I have the skills to understand what I'm even using, what skills I might be giving away, what skills I might be gaining? And last but not least, is it even worth it? Am I using it with intention or am I engaging with it blindly? The Deloitte case isn't a story about failure. It's a wake-up call about what happens when speed replaces scrutiny and people do not get the proper training and decision-making practice that they need. And this is the conversation we must begin having in schools. It's why in our upcoming student course, we're exploring AI literacy through the lens of 3 areas: identity, integrity, and impact. And I cannot wait to launch it for you. There'll probably be a link in the show notes, maybe to like a sign-up page, but it's basically helping the next generation not just learn how to use AI, but use it wisely. Because the future isn't asking us for perfection. Nobody is. It's asking for discernment, judgment. You can join the waitlist to the course, and like I said, I'll put the link in the show notes. It's going to be completely free, and I'm so excited to put it out. As always, remember, the most powerful AI you'll ever have access to is your own judgment.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Designing Schools community. Leaving a review for the podcast helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community to help create access and exposure to ideas and opportunities others may not even know exist.